Hanging pawns. How to play with hanging pawns. That's the question today. We're gonna look into what to look at when you're having hanging pawns, what to be worried about, and the assets you have, the possibilities you also have, because they have some dynamics within them when you have pawns that are potentially very weak, but they are also potentially very strong. So it's a delicate balance, and it's not so easy. It's not easy to just make some clear rules, but we'll try to find a sort of a guide for playing with hanging pawns in this video. It's going to be an entertaining game with Nigel Short versus Joel Lautier, and sit back and enjoy and learn a little. This is what GM Talks is all about, having some sort of infotainment, as I would call it. So let's get into it. Lautier, he sort of disappeared a little bit after this game from Pamplona 2000, and by the way, Lautier was a very clear d4 player, and Short can play the French, so playing e6 has no downside. He will not play e4, and here we go into a d5 line. This is often black likes this if he's afraid of the exchange variation. If you have looked into the Carlsbad masterclass, you are probably not afraid of this exchange variation. But if you have not, or if you're still afraid, then this is the move order you can use, and then you can play the Nimzo if white goes with knight c3 instead. And here we have, of course, many options. Black can go for a6. He can go for c6. He can go for c5. Oops. C5. You can go for d takes c4, the Vienna. I go for c6. That is seems now, and you can go for the very, very modern Rogozin. That is all the range right now, and black seems to be doing fine in the Rogozin. Short has always been a classical Queen's Gambit player. He seems to have stopped a little bit. I'm wondering why, because it seemed he had pretty good results actually. Anyway, this is the old main line. They can also go bishop f4. Is not a bad move. h6. Bishop h4. Taking on f6 is, of course, the other main line. But we will go fast forward past the opening. And here, b6 is the Tartakower variation. And that's probably the most pure opening for reaching positions with hanging pawns. So if you really like hanging pawns for black, for instance, then you should probably play the Tartakower variation. Also, it seems that hanging pawns and the Tartakower variation is kind of good against certain kind of white players that have problems dealing with these kind of positions. They're not so easy to play and understand, and often the sort of the aggression you're trying to come with, it does not really work. So I think it's not a bad opening, and of course it's been played in a lot of world championship matches, so it cannot be a bad opening. Bishop d3, I think there are many lines here. We saw in another game, also with hanging pawns, we saw the Fischer-Spassky game, and you can check that out also here on GM Talks. Bishop b7 makes sense. So black's position makes a sort of nice feel to it. It looks very harmonious, but there are some white squares here that are a little bit weakened by the h6 pawn. But on the other hand, it gives black some air for the king. I remember when I was younger, I was always very afraid of being mated on the back rank. So I really liked this, getting this h6 in. As I grew a little bit older, I got much more scared of having this weakness and having the white squared weakness also, because it has different ramification. For instance, a knight here is not so easy to get rid of because of this makes this weak, and so on. So there are pros and cons of having played h6. Castle makes sense, and black just did. And if you could say that if, for instance, this pawn here is sort of the weakness, because something will be weak on the c file no matter what black does when he plays b6. It's not like when in the Carlsbad where you have the pawn on this square and you put your pawn here and they are sort of very solid. But on the other hand, this is much more dynamic. Bishop d3 is the main line and black goes c5. And to be honest, it feels like this position should probably be okay for black. He has good pieces, good development, the rooks are connected and so on. But on the other hand, white is also having good pieces and good connection and activity and so on. And there is the slight unpleasant thing here. Actually, black would probably like to play this move back, right? It would be nicer to have the pawn on h7, not having these problems, potential problems with the white squares. Queen e2, all main line, and knight e4 is also the main line. And he takes here and here. And now we have potential hanging pawns. Rook here, very typical. Maybe the wrong rook. It shows that white has ambitions on the king side. If you were going to play against the hanging pawns, I would suggest you put the rooks on these two squares instead of having this rook on d1. So this might be a little bit weird. And it also means that black has the chance to play this move. By the way, these guys here, they are kind of weak. And the problem with them is that if one of them is exchanged, then the other one becomes an isolated pawn that can be a very bad factor. On the other hand, they also brings space with them, and there is a potential queenside majority here that could be interesting. Anyway, it's nice to put the queen here when the rook is not on the c file, and we see that white has ideas on this diagonal. Black goes on to develop more. Queen here and rook e8, and this is typical the place for the rook. You want to have it here. White goes with this, and this is also a very typical move for the situation where you would like to have your queen sort of keeping it together. The thing is, these guys can come under a lot of pressure, and in general, it's white's main idea to pressurize these two pawns as much as possible. This is simply what you want to do, and finding a way to sort of an idea here for white could be something like this and hoping to go here. Another idea could be something like this and trying to get rid of it. Another idea is this move and trying to get something going here. This looks a little bit annoying actually, because there is this square. Anyway, but okay, I think black holds after this move. It's still a little bit worrying to have to be, but this is something you just have to endure with black when you're going for these kind of positions. Your position is a little bit shaky and you have to play well. This is probably the problem with hanging pawns, is if you going for these, you have to play very well. You have to be sort of alert to your dynamic possibilities. And this is one of the things that short is actually very good at, and that's also why this opening suits him well. But on the other hand, if you play with hanging pawns, you will sometimes lose. This is just a part of having weakened your structure like that. Sometimes the timing will not be perfect and you will lose unless you're a computer. Okay, white does make a mistake here. He transposes immediately into hanging pawns, making black's position much easier to play. That this is clearly not the best move. Also, this guy becomes a little bit unstable. So now we have the situation with hanging pawns, and we see that white has some pressure on this here. We also see that black seems to be getting a lot of space. There is potential E file pressure, and there is potential B file pressure. On the other hand, white will try to pressure here. Black does have a serious break with this move. With this move that could unleash the power of black's position, and especially this bishop here. I think there's a famous Aljechin game where he plays d4 and crushes, I don't, was it Nimzowitsch or something? I think it was. I should try to find that game. That's an obvious example of hanging pawns. This is a more modern game. It's kind of a nice game because it have a lot of features for what we are trying to understand here. The Lautier has lost the blood and plays queen a4. He was tired of this knight here. The problem is that, and it looks like he's fine here. There is some pressure down here. This is unlocked, and of course, if you can get white to play something like this, black to play something like this, then this pawn becomes weak, and this square also becomes weak. But white black has a very nice move here, knight here, and that's a problem because this bishop here is in trouble, and basically you're trying to win a piece. If the bishop moves, let's say something like this, then something like this looks very scary because this bishop is coming and this queen is coming, and it's gonna end badly for poor white here. So this is not possible, so he has to take, and black of course takes with the queen and gets the bishop pair. Now the bishop pair in these positions are only good if the position is stable for the pawns. If white is able to get an outpost maybe here, so here he should start to look for something like b4, but that just loses a pawn, so it doesn't work. But in general, this is what white wants to do in situations like this. Want to get this pair of pawns sort of disconnected in some way, and making that so that the knight will get some outposts. In this position, white is already in trouble. Black is better. This bishop here is not doing anything. It's just standing looking down at the king, but there's nothing going on there. And black has potential guys here that can maybe push here. There's also the bishop pair, the black squares. This black bishop could become strong. This one has annoying pressure on f3. So white is already on the ropes. Natural move, eyeing the queen here, and another natural move, just releasing the bishop from anything. You can always defend like this, and white goes here, trying to get more influence on the king side. He's probably still have some hopes of attacking. It doesn't work. Queen b6, natural move. There is a b file, and it can often be a problem for white. And we have the other rook coming in here, and already black, I don't know how to prevent this move. It's going to come. It's going to land pretty hard, no matter what. Of course, the timing is important, but in general, this position is very unpleasant for white. He's sort of sitting on a house that's about to be hit by an earthquake. It's very unpleasant, and also suddenly black's pieces will jump to life, and it will be extremely dangerous. He goes rook here, so we see that this plan with rook e1 and d1 probably didn't work. We should say that white usually have these. He has sort of three plans. One of them is to develop so much initiative with the pieces that you win one of the pawns. This is, of course, the dream scenario. If you win one of the pawns, then the other one is weak, and you're probably going to win the game. So putting a lot of pressure on the pawns is important, and that's sort of the main plan. Then there is also another plan, that is to split the pawn with. I will not do it. I'll just show with a move like this, or this, getting some outposts on the white squares or the black squares for your pieces, and trying to maneuver in that position, and waiting sort of. If black does not get an attack with the hanging pawns, then they will be weaker and weaker and weaker, unless they become a pass pawn, as they do in this game. Rook here. There is pressure here. The problem is you don't have a black bishop, but black does, so it's very well defended. We can see that these pawns are just very well defended, no problems. But black is already much better here. So here we come, d4, attacking the knight. This is the move to look for. And sometimes you can play it as a pawn sacrifice. Usually black will get a lot of activity when he gets d4 in. So it's an important move to have in your arsenal. Yeah, you could play something like this, but it's still a big problem. Problem for black is that something like this is a serious problem. There's a check here, and there's also this gonna hang. So here black is basically white is basically losing material. Which is kind of hard to be honest, that you will lose material here. So well, I can show you. You have to take, right, and take back. And if you take with the queen, then rook, there's a mate. So you have to take here. And here, black can probably play something like this, check. And if you take, then the bishop is dropping. If you don't take, then maybe something like this is very, 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 very annoying. And the rook is falling. This does not help, and so on. And there's a check here. And this is just a disaster. For instance, something like this is just no fun at all. Okay, because of this check here. So a lot of tactics here, and this is part of the thing. That's why it's so difficult to play. If you don't spot the tactics, if you don't see the dynamics, then you will just have horrible results with hanging pawns. So and you should remember you are playing with high risk, so you can always lose one of the pawns, and it's possible, but it's also rewarding. And if you know what you're doing, then it's unpleasant for white. So he takes back, take here, and take here. And here, of course, it would be nice to go knight e4. Does just not work. I think you go something like this, and here, and this is just totally disastrous. This one is very weak. This one is very strong. And black, for instance, sometimes white can even, I think something like this. Oops, no. I think you just go. I think you go d2 here. I don't remember now. Yeah, d2 is good. And here you can go there, here. And on this one, you just go here, and this one drops. Complicated stuff. You also have a check here, and queen e2, which is also pretty unpleasant. Or queen g5, check if he takes on g5. Anyway, complicated stuff, a lot of calculation. He cannot play knight e4, so he went to a4, queen c6. You see this diagonal, so no taking on d4. And here we have a sort of parting moment, because in the book by Sokolovs on winning pawn structures, he gives one variation here, which we're gonna see, and then he gives another variation. But in Chessbase, they don't give the game continuation as Sokolovs gives. They just give the variation that he gives. So it's kind of confusing. I don't know which one is correct, actually. I could imagine that it was Sokolovs just made the variation up. But we're going to see Sokolovs' variation. It goes queen b5, setting a neat little trick. Of course, here this one is coming and it's clear that black is very much in the driving seat here, very much. But this is just losing, and give yourself 1 minute to see if you can find the combination for black here with a nice little double attack. No more help. Double attack by black. And this is the trick. Taking it, and boom. And we see this one, and we see this one, and black white can resign here, losing everything. By the way, I think double attacks can be very difficult to spot. I don't know why, but sometimes they just they're not there for me. So it's kind of a funny thing with double attacks, that it's so difficult to spot them, in my opinion. I think some players probably see them much easier than I do, but I think it's kind of difficult. But this one I see. I think actually it was easier to see them when I was younger. I don't know. Okay, the Chessbase variation goes like this. And of course, here we see that it's probably a nice variation because it shows a little bit about how big problems white does have in these situations here, that you just getting sort of swamped totally. By the way, I think here white misses the chance to play here, and that's kind of a lucky stroke because white is being totally outplayed here. So it's kind of unpleasant. But a computer, of course, would see this bishop c4 and just say, okay, I can just defend like this, no problem. And even though these pieces are all bad, there's no winning blow here. He instead played bishop here and rook here, nasty little move. And black resigned. Nice little game. I like the ending that Sokolov gave much more. So to recap, hanging pawns. You both have, it's sort of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You have two strong pawns in the center, but they are also under attack. And if you lose one of them, you're probably going to lose the game. So they also have dynamic potential, and they have open files, and it's sort of very asymmetrical that white is attacking in the D and C file, and black's got the E and B files, and sometimes D file, of course, like in this game where the D pawn becomes strong. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video from DM Talks. It was fun to make. Well, by the way, you should just see that this is the problem. And this is a nice little mate. Thank you for watching, and remember to sign up as a member, and that would be even more neat, tell somebody about DM Talks. This is what you can do for us. You can tell people, go to DM Talks, nice videos about chess. Thank you.